Jeff Furlong stood out from the crowd in several aspects. At 27, he diverged from the typical interests of his peers. Instead of seeking the usual thrills, he found solace in introspection, sipping fruit juice over beer, and abstaining from the allure of sports. His perspective on relationships transcended casual encounters, viewing them as a mutual respect rather than a conquest. Although leaning towards introversion, he balanced his social inclinations adeptly. His eclectic tastes spanned from classical melodies to disdain for contemporary rap and hip-hop. His values prioritized ideals over material possessions, a mindset fostered by the security of a trust fund from his late grandparents. Despite his cerebral demeanor, Jeff embodied resilience, a paradox to those who equated sensitivity with weakness. Though indifferent to mainstream athletics, Jeff's passion lay in nature and physical fitness, sculpting a physique that blended gym-toned muscles with rugged outdoor endurance. Standing at an imposing 6 feet 4 inches and weighing 230 pounds, he was an imposing figure, capable of inflicting significant pain upon any challenger, even without you to throw out formal martial arts training. Oh, and there's one more detail about Jeff. He couldn't care less about what anyone thought of him. Regrettably, this nonchalant attitude often came across as somewhat hostile to many women. Despite possessing numerous qualities that most would find highly desirable, Jeff had few meaningful romantic or sexual relationships, even though his libido rivaled that of many young, fit heterosexual males. Jeff's profession as an environmental engineer at the non-profit organization Wild Things, Inc., aligned with his passion for preserving natural spaces and preventing government concessions to special interests for the exploitation of resources meant for the American people. His work often put him at odds with powerful corporations and individuals, particularly when he testified against them in court. But as previously noted, Jeff couldn't care less about their opinions. He pursued environmental protection with a fervor unmatched by his adversaries, driven by his dedication to Wild Things' mission of safeguarding the environment for all. The story's genesis lies in a highly unusual circumstance. Several corporate executives keen on exploiting a wilderness area for its timber and mineral resources planned a family outing on one of the rivers within the region. Jeff and Wild Things vehemently opposed both the exploitation and the river trip itself. They foresaw that the powered boats intended for the outing could easily harm the pristine river basin, and they also recognized the expedition's lack of appreciation for its potential dangers. Despite Jeff's compelling testimony during a preliminary injunction hearing, where the judge appeared sympathetic to the interests of the corporations, the judge denied the injunction against the corporate bigwigs and their families' planned river excursion. Consequently, the trip was set to occur in 2 weeks' time. Jeff and Wild Things were deeply troubled, particularly upon realizing during the hearing that Tom Baring, the owner of the organization providing the boats and guides, lacked experience and attention to safety. Jeff's assertion that the most perilous rapid on the journey, ominously named the Devil's Jacuzzi, could be navigated rather than bypassed was particularly damning. Jeff, drawing from personal experience, knew that portaging around the Devil's Jacuzzi was the only safe course of action, as at least 6 people he knew of had perished attempting to run it in the past 3 years alone. The orchestrator of the ill-fated excursion was Carlton Davis, CEO of the leading special interest corporation, Ripet Corp. A Harvard MBA graduate aged 55, Davis managed to persuade his 32-year-old trophy wife, Melissa, to join the trip along with their 5-year-old son, Wilson. However, Melissa adamantly refused to bring along their 2-year-old daughter, Constance, who remained at home in the care of the nanny and Carlton's parents. Being a boat with the Davis family were Tom Baring, the inexperienced owner of the adventure organization overseeing the trip, Carlton's male bodyguard, Joe Reno, and his female assistant, 38-year-old Stephanie Baker, accompanied by her 35-year-old husband, Bill. Similar setups were replicated in 5 other boats, each containing executives and staff members from different special interest corporations or organizations. To his credit, Baring insisted that all participants wear Type 5 life jackets and helmets, although his proficiency in ensuring proper fitting was lacking. Jeff grappled with the decision of whether to stand by and watch the impending disaster unfold or take action to mitigate potential harm. Upon learning that children would be on two of the boats and considering the forecast of rain the night before the trip, which would increase the river's flow, he concluded that intervention was necessary. With the assistance of 3 fellow Wild Things employees, Jeff devised a cantilever equipped with a pulley system featuring hooks along the cable running between them. Positioned just after the most treacherous stretch of the Devil's Jacuzzi, the cantilever pulley setup aimed to offer a lifeline to those imperiled by the dangerous currents. Jeff also coordinated with the local rescue organization, of which he was a member, to station 2 boats downstream from the Devil's Jacuzzi. As the flotilla approached, Jeff positioned himself atop the cantilever, strategically located above the most probable area for individuals ejected from their boats to end up. 2 of his colleagues manned the pulley system to aid Jeff, while the third positioned atop a nearby rock to document the unfolding events. Jeff's courtroom testimony proved to be prophetic. In the first boat, carrying Baring, the Davis family and others encountered the Devil's Jacuzzi, disaster struck almost immediately. Though Jeff couldn't discern the identities of those on the boat, he swiftly sprang into action as a child and a woman were swept into the rapids. With decisive action, Jeff snatched each individual, securing their poorly fitted life jackets to the pulley hooks for his coworkers to assist in their rescue. The ensuing chaos saw a man being swept down the rapids, too weighty to be pulled out. Jeff skillfully redirected him towards the safer right bend. Following him was another woman, whom Jeff promptly extracted and secured her life jacket onto a hook. Then came a man, beyond Jeff's immediate reach, hurtling down the perilous left bend. Despite Jeff's efforts, he was unable to alter his trajectory. 2 more men struggled to cling to the overturned boat, but both were eventually swept away. Jeff managed to deflect the first towards the right bend, while the second was carried down the dangerous left bend. Witnessing the calamity unfold, the other boats, spurred on by the documenting worker, quickly steered towards a flat area just upstream of the Devil's Jacuzzi and disembarked. The downstream rescue boats sprang into action, pulling the 4 men who had been swept down the rapids out of the water. Among them, Carlton Davis and Tom Baring, who had taken the right side, emerged shaken, but largely unscathed. However, Joe Reno, the bodyguard, swept down the left bend, tragically lost his life. The other man, Bill Baker, sustained a broken arm and leg along with water ingestion, but his condition was hopeful for recovery. The weight of Joe's impact against the rocks overwhelmed the protective capacity of his helmet, resulting in his fatal injuries. Subsequently, the 5 remaining boats opted to bypass the Devil's Jacuzzi and successfully completed the trip. However, upon reaching safety, 3 women and 2 men from those boats chose to join the rescue team after witnessing the harrowing events. Melissa Davis, Stephanie Baker, and young Wilson Davis, whom Jeff and his team had rescued, were visibly shaken and in tears. Amidst the chaos, with helmets on and wet hair obscuring their faces, Jeff's opportunity for a clear view of the women was thwarted. The child, crying uncontrollably, was cradled in what seemed to be his mother's arms. 2 of Jeff's colleagues escorted the distraught trio to reunite with the men who had escaped serious injury or worse, while the third aided Jeff in dismantling the cantilever pulley assembly. Subsequently, Wild Things, spearheaded by Jeff, took a stand in the media, condemning the judge, Tom Baring and Carlton Davis, for their reckless endeavor. Legal action followed, with Reno's estate suing Baring and Ripet Corp., resulting in swift settlements. Baring faced repercussions, losing his state license to operate an adventure organization. Additionally, all the participants from the special interest corporations suffered significant public relations setbacks. The ensuing backlash was forceful enough to halt, at least temporarily, the endeavors of these corporations and organizations to obtain timber and mineral rights in the vicinity. of the Devil's Jacuzzi. One individual deeply impacted by the calamitous river trip, and previously unaware of the court testimony for the preliminary injunction, was Melissa Davis. Melissa seethed with anger, feeling the weight of the peril her life and her young sons had been placed in. She couldn't shake the thought of how Carlton had recklessly endangered them both, and the idea of bringing their 2-year-old daughter, Constance, along had her boiling with fury. Uncharacteristically, Melissa confronted Carlton, her fury unleashed in a heated tirade, even in front of his parents, leaving a frosty atmosphere in the Davis household. Driven by a newfound sense of gratitude and admiration, Melissa delved into the details of the court proceedings, scouring the transcript of the preliminary injunction hearing and seeking information about Jeff Furlong and Wild Things, both online and through indirect means. Fueled by genuine gratitude, Melissa penned a heartfelt letter of thanks to Wild Things, accompanied by a generous donation of $250,000. Initially hesitant, Carlton relented under Melissa's reminder of the debt they owed to Wild Things for potentially saving their entire family. However, Melissa's experience went beyond gratitude. She found herself increasingly drawn to Jeff Furlong, the man she considered her hero. In her quest for validation, she even went as far as hiring a private investigator to uncover every detail about him. Weeks later, when she spotted Jeff in person, her visceral reaction left her perplexed, her feelings and motivations tangled in a complex web of emotions. The life-altering river trip compelled Melissa to undergo a profound self-examination. Reflecting on her life, she realized she had been shallow, prioritizing material possessions and leveraging her physical beauty to manipulate others, especially men, without allowing herself to form genuine emotional connections. However, her children stood as the sole exception to her emotionally detached demeanor. She felt a unique bond with them, willing to make any sacrifice for their well-being. Ultimately, Melissa confronted the unsettling truth that she didn't love her husband, Carlton, or any other adult for that matter, recognizing the superficiality of her adult relationships. Most challenging was accepting her lack of empathy and charitable spirit. Determined to change, Melissa adopted her middle name, Bethany, as her first name and her maiden name, Ross, as her surname. Embracing a new identity, she began volunteering part-time at Wild Things, portraying herself as a single mother. Instead of flaunting her luxury car, she opted for a modest 5-year-old Prius for her volunteer days. When Bethany, formerly Melissa, met Jeff in person, an unfamiliar sensation washed over her. For the first time, she sought the goodwill of a man, rather than expecting adoration or reverence for her own allure. This encounter marked a pivotal moment of transformation in her life. Bethany's demeanor towards Bethany was friendly, yet reserved, a refreshing departure from the typical behavior she had encountered from men. He treated her with respect and equality, rather than succumbing to flattery or obsequiousness. Bethany made a conscious effort to align her schedule with Jeff's at Wild Things, engaging in casual interactions and collaborating on projects over lunch in the cafeteria. Eventually, they found themselves alone one Thursday for a late lunch, providing an opportunity for Bethany to broach the topic she had been curious about. "So, I heard you were quite the hero about a month before I started here," Bethany remarked with a smile. Jeff shrugged modestly. "I think that's a bit of an exaggeration." Curious, Bethany pressed further. "How so?" Jeff's expression became somber. "Unfortunately, one person didn't make it out alive during that incident, which was a real tragedy." Bethany contemplated his response. "But wouldn't more lives have been lost without your intervention?" she queried, sensing the weight of his actions. After a thoughtful pause, Jeff responded in a solemn tone. "It's highly probable that the little boy wouldn't have made it. He was headed towards the left channel, and both children and heavier individuals are at greater risk in such situations. Plus, his ill-fitted life jacket would have likely sealed his fate. As for the 2 women I pulled out, they might have taken the right channel, where the odds of survival were higher. But I'm grateful I could spare them even that slim chance." I did manage to redirect 2 guys to the right channel, and they fared okay. But another man I couldn't redirect suffered severe injuries, though he's since recovered. A tear welled in Bethany's eye as she grappled with the realization that her son's life hung in the balance during the ordeal. A fact she hadn't fully comprehended until now. Sensing her distress, Jeff gently inquired, "Did I say something wrong?" Wiping away her tear, Bethany managed a smile, albeit strained. "No, just thinking about that little boy. He's around the same age as my son, and it's terrifying to consider what could have happened if you hadn't been there." As she spoke, she instinctively placed her left hand over Jeff's right, an action that seemed to spark a connection between them. Jeff and Bethany found themselves engrossed in conversation far longer than their usual lunch breaks, parting ways with genuine smiles on their faces. Driving home, Bethany's mind was consumed with thoughts of Jeff's unwavering dedication to his cause, a quality she had never encountered before, alongside her appreciation for his intelligence, demeanor, rugged appearance, and moral fortitude. That evening, following yet another clash with Carlton over her newfound assertiveness, Bethany, now firmly resolved, engaged in what seemed like a reconciliation with her husband. However, beneath the surface, her decision to pursue Jeff was solidified. After several more interactions with Jeff at the office, Bethany set her plan to seduce him into motion, emboldened by Carlton's upcoming business trip that weekend. On Monday morning, she approached Jeff with a mix of genuine nerves and feigned hesitation. As he sat alone in his office, "Hey, Jeff," she began, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. "I was wondering if you could do me a favor this Saturday, if you're not too busy." Jeff's smile was warm and reassuring. "Of course, I'd be happy to help. What do you need?" he inquired, his curiosity piqued. "Well, my sister is tying the knot again for the 3rd time, so it's going to be a small affair," Bethany explained, a hint of amusement in her voice. "I'd rather not face the onslaught of questions from relatives alone. Would you be willing to accompany me?" "Of course," Jeff replied readily. "I have something planned for the afternoon, but I should be free by 4 p.m. What time does the event start?" "We don't need to be there until 6:30. Does that work for you?" Bethany asked. "Absolutely, I'm looking forward to it." "Will your kids be joining us?" Jeff inquired. "No, it's adults only, so I have a sitter arranged." "If you give me your address," Bethany said, though she already knew it from her investigation, "I'll pick you up at 6 o'clock. Jeff's smile widened, and he chuckled. "That's a first for me, a pretty woman picking me up." Bethany laughed. "I find that hard to believe, but regardless, I might be tied up with child care this week. Even if we don't cross paths, I'll see you Saturday at 6. Oh, and just in case my sister's plans change unexpectedly, let me have your cell phone number." Jeff readily shared his number, and Bethany made a mental note to ensure everything went smoothly for their weekend outing. Jeff graciously exchanged numbers with Bethany, anticipating their upcoming plans. Bethany's fabricated tale unraveled on Thursday night, when she called Jeff, feigning distress. "Jeff, I'm so sorry," she lamented, her voice thick with false emotion. "My flaky sister called off the wedding last minute, so I can't take you there on Saturday. I'm really disappointed, especially since I bought a new dress for the occasion." Jeff, ever the gentleman, responded without hesitation. "We can't let that dress go to waste. How about I take you out to dinner and dancing instead? It'll be almost like a wedding reception, minus the other guests." Jeff, I can't impose on you like that," Bethany protested, her plea sounding rehearsed. "I was the one who invited you, and I don't have enough money for a fancy dinner." "Don't worry about a thing," Jeff reassured her. "I'll take care of everything. Shall I pick you up at 6 p.m. on Saturday instead?" Bethany knew she couldn't bring Jeff to her lavish mansion, nor had she secured a rented apartment for her planned seduction. "No, I still need to pick you up to make myself feel better," she replied smoothly. "Thank you for being so understanding. I'll see you on Saturday, and I'll make the dinner reservation." Bethany had meticulously arranged everything for their evening, including making a reservation. at a secluded restaurant 2 weeks prior, ensuring they wouldn't bump into anyone they knew. And she wasn't exaggerating about the new dress. It was a stunning ensemble that she knew would catch Jeff's eye. Arriving at Jeff's modest house in the cul-de-sac just before 6 on Saturday, Bethany turned heads. As she walked up the sidewalk, every eye in the vicinity seemed to be drawn to her. She wore a yellow sundress adorned with red and blue flowers, its hem grazing a few inches above her knees. Her 4-inch heels matched the dress perfectly, complemented by an ankle bracelet and a copper necklace. Her lustrous brunette hair with delicate golden highlights was styled in an elegant, half-up, half-down fashion. It was a sight reminiscent of royalty gracing the halls of Hampton Court. As Jeff opened the door and caught sight of Bethany, he was taken aback. He had already concluded that she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in person. But in that moment, she seemed to transcend human beauty, resembling more of a Greek goddess than a mere mortal. Hastily, Jeff slipped on his sunglasses to conceal his astonishment. "Hi, Jeff. Looks like I found the right place." Bethany greeted him with a radiant smile. "Wow. You look stunning," Jeff replied, his own smile hiding the fact that his jaw almost hit the floor at the sight of her. "Thank you. You look great, too," Bethany said, straightening Jeff's tie, which perfectly complemented his charcoal gray suit. "If you're up for it, could you drive?" Bethany requested, offering him the keys. "I'll give you directions." "Sure thing," Jeff replied, catching the keys as Bethany tossed them to him. Opening the car door for her, he was grateful for his sunglasses as she gracefully slid into the passenger seat, revealing her sleek thighs. The confined space of the driver's seat wasn't ideal for a long drive, but for the 20-minute journey to the restaurant, it was manageable. Keeping his focus on the road rather than Bethany was the real challenge. At dinner, the food was delicious, the atmosphere delightful, and the conversation engaging. Bethany found herself captivated by the blend of intellect and humor in their discussion, as well as the comforting sense of security she felt in Jeff's presence. Meanwhile, Jeff found Bethany to be simultaneously alluring and intriguing, the most captivating woman he had ever encountered. After dinner and a few lively dances at the nearby nightclub, followed by 2 slow dances, where Bethany nestled her 5'9" frame against Jeff's 6'4" stature, she whispered in his ear, "Could you take me back to your place for a while? I need to be back to relieve the sitter by 1 am. And there are some things we should talk about." Jeff secretly hoped that Bethany's desire to talk included the prospect of an intimate encounter with him. The ride back to his house was subdued, each lost in their own thoughts. Once they entered Jeff's house, the atmosphere changed drastically. Neither Jeff nor Bethany could recall exactly what happened next, but before long they found themselves entwined and undressed on Jeff's bed, lost in a passionate embrace. Their lovemaking was tender and intense, leaving them both breathless and fulfilled. As they lay beside each other, their eyes met, and a sense of contentment washed over them. "You're a magician," Jeff murmured, still in awe of the experience. "You're an animal," Bethany retorted playfully, planting a kiss on his nose. "My body won't be the same," Jeff remarked half serious. "I feel utterly spent." "Then don't move," Bethany suggested, her voice filled with satisfaction. Hours passed, with Bethany still draped over Jeff's prone form. Eventually, they both came back to their senses. "You're incredible," Jeff whispered, a smile gracing his lips. "That was beyond anything I've ever experienced." "That's quite the compliment," Bethany replied, her grin matching his. "You're the best I've ever had, stud." "So does that mean I'll be seeing you again?" She teased, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," Jeff chuckled, his affection evident. As they dressed, Jeff offered his assistance, eliciting playful protests from Bethany. The playful banter, they both knew this wouldn't be their last encounter. The following day, both the nanny and Wilson noticed a remarkable change in Melissa's demeanor. She seemed happier and more vibrant than usual. "I had a good night's sleep," she replied with a smile, though her rest had been filled with vivid fantasies of Jeff. exploring every possible position with her. In the weeks that followed, Bethany meticulously refined her long-term plan. After a particularly indulgent lunch one Wednesday, she found herself so overwhelmed with euphoria that she felt like a zombie, indifferent to the fact that she'd be walking bowlegged that afternoon. Despite the potential pitfalls, she remained resolute in her determination to see her plan through. For the first time in her life, Bethany found herself motivated by something other than material possessions. The experience at the Devil's Jacuzzi had prompted a deep self-examination, revealing the shallowness of her previous priorities. Inspired by Jeff and the altruistic ethos of Wild Things, she felt a newfound connection. A primitive attachment to another person, unlike anything she'd felt with Carlton or any other man before him. She questioned whether it was love, as her heart fluttered whenever Jeff was near, her entire being ignited by his touch. Jeff too was captivated by Bethany's allure. Beyond her outward beauty, he sensed a profound passion within her that was both mesmerizing and irresistible. Over the course of several months, Bethany flawlessly executed her plan, surpassing all previous abilities and desires. Motivated by her goal, she became the most dedicated volunteer at Wild Things, and Jeff's most devoted lover, exceeding any man's expectations. Despite his intellectual curiosity, Jeff had many unanswered questions about Bethany's situation. He puzzled over how she managed to live modestly while volunteering instead of working a paid job, yet never seemed lacking in material comforts. He also wondered why he was never invited to her apartment. However, his concerns were somewhat alleviated by Bethany's willingness to include her children in their outings on weekends, fostering a strong bond between Jeff and her kids. Bethany was elated to see how much her children adored Jeff and vice versa. She was certain that her youngest, Constance, held Jeff in as high regard as she did. However, Bethany's plan relied on the fact that her children had a distant relationship with Carlton, who was often too preoccupied to be a nurturing father. His absence from their lives meant that discussions about Jeff, or F, as Constance affectionately called him, never raised any suspicions at the Davis mansion. Bethany realized that the most crucial aspect of her plan had fallen into place after a particularly intense Saturday night spent at Jeff's house. Feeling emboldened, she considered accelerating her timeline. However, even the most meticulously laid plans can encounter unexpected complications. One Saturday afternoon, while at an amusement park with Jeff and the kids, a significant flaw in Bethany's plan surfaced. As she escorted Constance to the restroom, Jeff and Wilson made their way to a watch of the flume ride. "Are you interested in going on the flume ride, Wilson?" Jeff inquired, lifting the boy up to get a better view. "No, it's too scary. I might fall in like I did in the river and get really scared." Wilson responded with a shudder, his words sending a chill down Jeff's spine. "You fell into a river?" Jeff asked, taken aback by the revelation. "Yeah, Mommy and Daddy took me, along with Joe and some others, and I fell in. Some man pulled me and Mommy out. But Joe died," Wilson recounted, his innocence masking the gravity of the situation. "Mommy wouldn't let me go to his funeral." Jeff was stunned by the revelation. Attempting to maintain composure, he casually pressed on. "What's your daddy's name?" he asked, trying to mask his shock. "Carlton Davis," Wilson responded promptly. "And your mommy's name?" Jeff queried, though his heart raced with unease. "Melissa Davis," Wilson replied, his confusion evident as if it were common knowledge. Jeff swiftly changed the subject, masking his shock. But he was certain he had gone pale. His suspicion was confirmed when Bethany returned with Constance, who reached out to him. Taking her into his arms, Jeff managed a weak smile as Bethany noticed his pallor. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Jeff. Is everything all right?" she inquired with concern. "Yeah, everything's fine. Let's head over to the fancy carousel," Jeff deflected, attempting to regain his composure. Despite Jeff's efforts to appear unaffected, Bethany sensed something was amiss. As they strapped the kids into their car seats and prepared to leave, She confronted Jeff directly. Something's not right. Jeff, what's going on? We need to talk on Monday. Give me a call when you have some time. Jeff replied cryptically. I'll meet you at my place. But I'm not scheduled to work at Wild Things on Monday. Bethany started to protest. Just let me know when you're available. Jeff interrupted firmly, cutting her off. Later, as Bethany dropped Jeff off that Saturday evening, she inquired about their plans for the night. However, Jeff's response was unexpected. Something came up at the amusement park. I can't see you tonight. See you Monday, he said abruptly, refraining from the usual goodbye kiss. After Melissa, now known as Bethany, returned home with the kids and put Constance down for her nap, she engaged in a quiet conversation with Wilson. Did you talk with Jeff at the amusement park while your sister and I were in the washroom? She inquired gently. Yeah, Wilson replied with a smile. What did you talk about? Bethany asked. He asked if I wanted to go on the flume ride. Wilson answered, his smile widening. Bethany paused, processing Wilson's response. You mean the flume ride? Yeah, that one, Wilson confirmed. And what did you tell him? I said I was too scared because you and I fell in a river once, and some man had to save us. And Joe died, and I couldn't go to his funeral. Wilson explained earnestly. Everything suddenly became clear to Bethany. She didn't need to ask any further questions. Meanwhile, Jeff wasted no time in researching the Davis family once he returned home. After scouring the internet for an hour, he confirmed that Bethany Ross was indeed Melissa Davis, still married to Carlton Davis. His heart sank. Not only had he fallen deeply in love with Bethany and her children, but he had unwittingly become involved with a married woman. Jeff was consumed with a mix of emotions, determined to understand Bethany's motivations and why she had shattered his heart so callously. Simultaneously, Bethany was conducting her own research and preparing for the impending meeting with Jeff, unsure whether it would turn into a confrontation, but mentally preparing for any outcome. Bethany messaged Jeff, proposing a meeting at noon at his house on Monday. As she unlocked the door with her key and entered his home, Jeff greeted her with a straightforward, "Glad that you could make it, Melissa." Bethany took a deep breath, gathering her resolve. She approached Jeff, knelt down in front of him, and placed her hands on his thighs. I've been infatuated with you ever since you rescued Wilson and me, and now I'm in love with you. I want me and the kids to be with you, she confessed. Jeff's expression remained guarded as he responded, How could I ever trust you after the way you've manipulated and lied to me for months? Bethany maintained her position on her knees, but met Jeff's gaze squarely. I can earn your trust once we're together full time. If I had approached you as Melissa Davis, you never would have entertained a relationship with me. But now that you're in love with Bethany Ross, there's no reason you can't love Melissa Davis just as much. Jeff insisted that Bethany rise from her kneeling position, and they proceeded to engage in a heartfelt conversation for the next hour. Bethany bared her soul, admitting to her past shallowness, detailing how her relationship with Jeff had transformed her, and expressing her belief in their compatibility and the positive changes she had experienced because of him. Melissa sensed Jeff's hesitation, so she decided to play her trump cards. She retrieved an envelope from the coffee table when she had subtly placed there upon her arrival. Handing it to Jeff, she said, Inside are two things. First, there's a strategic plan from Carlton's company Ripit, detailing their scheme to exploit the mineral rights in the wilderness area around the Devil's Jacuzzi and dam the river. With this information, Wild Things and their legal team can put a stop to it. Jeff's eyes widened as he extracted what looked like a lengthy document from the envelope. The second item is a pregnancy test I took a week ago, confirming that I'm pregnant. Attached to it is a DNA test proving that you're the father. Melissa revealed, her voice quavering with emotion. Let me know what you want to do, she concluded, turning to leave. Just as she reached for the doorknob, Jeff's voice rang out, though devoid of anger. You told me you were on birth control. Melissa turned back to face him, her expression a mix of resolve and vulnerability. I was, at the time, I told you that. But being the manipulative person I am, I deliberately got pregnant with your child, hoping it would solidify our relationship. I truly hope it worked, she sighed before exiting the room. Jeff's initial shock gave way to determination. On Tuesday morning, he woke up early, determined to end his pity party. After thoroughly reading through the document from Ripet, he formulated a plan. Heading to the local library as soon as it opened at 8 a.m., he accessed an obscure website frequented by those in the technical, wilderness preserving community. Anonymous, he posted a detailed story containing all the crucial information gleaned from the Ripet report. By 10 a.m., he was back at work, ready to face the day. The following Wednesday, Jeff followed his routine of checking the obscure website at work. Taking his time to read through the story he had posted, he then hurriedly brought it to the attention of the in-house counsel. Over the next 2 weeks, Wild Things experienced a flurry of activity unlike any other time in its history. With prior knowledge of Ripet's plans and support from generous donors and charitable foundations, they swiftly mobilized. In just 2 weeks, they effectively thwarted Ripet's schemes. Through strategic land acquisitions, legal maneuvers, and well-timed lawsuits, Wild Things rendered Ripet's efforts to despoil the wilderness area surrounding the Devil's Jacuzzi futile. By the time Ripet realized what was happening, it was too late. Despite the professional triumphs of the past 2 weeks, Jeff's personal life had taken a devastating turn. He had grown deeply attached to the woman he knew as Bethany, as well as her children, and had begun to envision a future together. The frenzied pace of work had distracted him from the personal turmoil, but once the intensity subsided, he sank into a profound depression, a feeling he had never experienced before. The following week was a struggle. Jeff took 3 days off to seek solace in the wilderness area that he and Wild Things had saved, but even the serene surroundings couldn't ease his troubled mind. Attempting to return to work on Friday, he found himself merely going through the motions, unable to shake off the weight of his emotions. While his co-workers noticed his distress, Jeff remained tight-lipped about the cause, though they offered their support. Saturday morning, Jeff sluggishly made his way to the kitchen, hoping to lift his spirits with some blueberry pancakes. To his surprise, the locked front door swung open, revealing Melissa, Wilson, and Constance. Thankfully, Jeff had managed to dress himself. Constance rushed toward him, showering him with kisses and affectionately chanting his name. Jeff scooped her up, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in days. Meanwhile, Wilson clung to his leg, laughing joyfully. Jeff lifted him up as well, enveloping both children in a comforting embrace. As he looked at Melissa, her gentle aura and burgeoning baby bump filled him with awe. It was a moment of profound beauty, unlike anything he had ever experienced. With a gulp, Jeff realized he had never seen anything so captivating in his life. Melissa swiftly intervened, directing the kids to give Jeff some space. With excitement, Constance asked if they could have pancakes, prompting Jeff to promise them a batch. It was the first time he had laughed in over 3 weeks. For the next hour, Jeff, Melissa, and the kids enjoyed a lively pancake-making session. Melissa took charge of setting the table and serving drinks, while the children eagerly assisted Jeff in the kitchen. Once everyone had eaten their fill, Melissa suggested that Wilson help Jeff bring in some belongings from their car and trailer. Trailer, Jeff questioned, glancing out the window to see a U-Haul attached to a Mercedes sedan. Confusion clouded his face as he turned to Melissa for an explanation. With a confident stride, Melissa approached him, pressing her baby bump against him as she spoke. I filed for divorce and left Carlton's mansion. We need a place to stay, and when I asked the kids where they wanted to go, they both insisted on coming here, to Jeff's house, or, in Constance's case, F's house. Jeff's initial reaction was to feel a surge of anger, but as he looked into Melissa's earnest gaze and saw the excitement in the kids' faces, his frustration melted away. Attempting to sound stern, he grasped Melissa's shoulders and asked in a low voice, "And you didn't think it was necessary to talk to me about it?" Meeting his gaze head-on, Melissa's voice took on a determined edge. "No, because you love me and my kids. You're about to experience the most amazing time in bed. And will make you the happiest man alive. First, with a monumental victory in preserving a wilderness area. And then, by giving you a ready-made family. You can be angry, but you can't fight it. And tonight, you can take out any frustration on my body as long as you don't hurt the baby." With a quick kiss on his lips, Melissa pushed him away and instructed him to help Wilson with their belongings. Over the next 2 hours, as Constance and Wilson enthusiastically assisted Jeff in unloading their belongings from the car and trailer, Melissa directed them on where to put everything in Jeff's sparsely furnished house. By the end of their efforts, the second bedroom had been transformed into a cozy kids' room, complete with bunk beds, dressers, and toys. Jeff's closet now overflowed with Melissa's clothes, while the kitchen boasted an array of new appliances. And to Jeff's amazement, his old flat-screen TV had been upgraded to a sleek 75-inch smart TV. Once they finished unloading, Melissa suggested returning the U-Haul and then heading to the park. Handing Jeff her Mercedes keys, she asked, "Can you drive, Jeff?" After securing the kids in their car seats, the newfound family dropped off the U-Haul and made their way to the nicest park in the area. Jeff found himself too preoccupied with playing with the kids to have a chance to vent at Melissa. From pushing them on swings to playing Billy Goat Gruff on the jungle gym, he was fully engaged in their fun. Each time he attempted to shoot Melissa a disapproving look, she countered with blowing him a kiss and a smile. After the park, while Constance took a quick nap, Jeff, Wilson, and Melissa played a board game. Much to Jeff's delight, Wilson emerged victorious. They capped off the day with an early dinner at Chuck E. Cheese's, followed by a round of miniature golf. By the time they returned home, the kids were ready for bed. Insisting that Jeff read them a story, they were both sound asleep, Wilson on the top bunk. Before he finished reading, when Jeff returned to the living area, he found Melissa had impeccably tidied up the entire living room and kitchen. She guided him to a kitchen chair, then perched herself on his lap, holding a large envelope. "I know this is all sudden, but I didn't want to give you a chance to object," Melissa began, her arms wrapped around his neck, one hand gripping the envelope. After a quick kiss, she opened it up. "Let me show you what I have here." Inside was a court-stamped copy of her petition for divorce from Carlton, along with a proposed asset disposition. "It's for irreconcilable differences," she explained. "I'm only asking for our personal possessions, $2 million and full funding for the kids' college funds. No alimony, minimal child support." "He'll likely agree." Jeff's eyes widened as he skimmed the document. But he remained silent. "And this," Melissa continued, pulling out another document, "is my petition for a name change to Bethany Melissa Ross. Who knows? Maybe in the future it'll be Bethany Melissa Furlong." Jeff's eyebrows remained raised as he carefully examined each document Melissa presented. "These next documents are another DNA test and an ultrasound," she explained. "The DNA test confirms that you're the father of the child in my womb, and the ultrasound shows that it's a little girl, healthy so far." Jeff absorbed the information, his expression unreadable. "And this last document is a prenup," Melissa continued. "I'll sign it if you ever ask me to marry you. It states that if you divorce me for proven adultery, you're entitled to all community property and assets I bring into the marriage, except for $250,000. After Jeff reviewed the prenup, Melissa spoke again. "I know I've been manipulative. and I should have discussed everything with you. You have every right to be angry to distrust me. But I love you. You are the only man I've truly loved. If you take me in, I'll be yours completely. Even if we never marry. Her tears surprised Jeff, and despite his conflicting emotions, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy. After a long pause, Jeff growled, "Bethany, you'll never be known as Melissa again. Bethany, you really are a manipulative little bitch, but I can't help loving you." With that, Jeff stood up, carried Bethany to his bedroom, and they had an interesting time in bed. 10 years later, things were great for the Furlong family in their large but unpretentious house. Jeff Furlong was now the chairman of Wild Things, the most successful charity of its type in the U.S. Bethany Furlong was the founder and executive director of the best-known local charity for helping at-risk kids, but her main mission in life was to keep Jeff the most sexually satisfied man in the state. The former Wilson Davis, now Wilson Furlong, had just gotten his driver's license and was the captain of the JV basketball team at his high school, having changed his name after his biological father gave up his parental rights and Jeff adopted him. Constance Furlong was the prima ballerina at the local dance studio and had Jeff wrapped around her little finger. Almost 10-year-old Melanie was the family cut-up in tomboy and the best hitter in Little League Baseball. 7-year-old Jack kept all of the other family members hopping with his intellectual curiosity and passion for everything in life. Finally, Russian wolfhound Luna kept a watchful eye on all the family members, ensuring they remained as safe and happy as they were now. Carlton Davis's company Ripet went bankrupt, but he floated to the Bahamas with his third wife on the golden parachute he got from Ripet.